Biom, Yud Aleph ניסן Tafshin Lamed Aleph Ois Beis. So in Ois Aleph we explained the concept of Asher. What's Asher? And let's just make a quick recap. What's the idea of Yud Aleph? 10 is Kedusha, spirituality. The fact that spirituality exists as a separate entity than physicality, that is called Gullus. Gullus means concealment, that the true godliness that's in the world is concealed. Mitzrayim, constraints, means there is a separation and a division between the physical and spiritual. That's the world Hashem created. But He created that world in order for us to know and recognize the truth of the reality that godliness and the world are all one. And that's why that idea of 11 means going beyond the 10, not spiritual, but rather a renewal, a new concept where it's totally one, where godliness and the world become totally one. That's what happened by Yetzias Mitzrayim, by leaving the constraints of Egypt, except that then it was only the beginning, because then it was only for the time being. It didn't become fully permeated in the world. Whereas when it becomes complete in the Gula Amitis Vashlema, when Mashiach comes, Asher, the idea of Asher, the oneness of Hashem and the Jewish people will be full and complete. And it comes out also in the way a Jew serves Hashem. I'm not doing it because it makes sense, because I feel it, because those are things which are outside pushing me. That's not because it's my very essence. I'm doing it with the greatest pride, Asher, with the feeling of the greatest feeling of connection and desire and will and happiness and joy, because that's who I am, that's what my essence is all about. But the question that Rabbi asks is that how can we say that it's not real choice? Because the fact is, choosing Hashem is something that makes sense. The fact that we choose Hashem was we're choosing something that makes sense, because what's the other choice? It's not that there's another choice and we're choosing Hashem because that's who we are. We're choosing Hashem because it makes sense that this is the wisest thing to do. And the same thing when Hashem chooses us. He chooses us because the fact is that it's only outwardly that we seem the same as the nations of the world, but the truth is that a Jew is a totally different being. And so in order to explain this, the Rebbe goes on in his base and quotes a medrash on the pasuk that says, Chelki havaya amra nafshi. The pasuk says in Eicha, my lot, Hashem, that's what my soul chose Hashem for my lot. I chose Hashem because that's my soul chose Hashem. And the Medrash gives a mashal, an analogy, to a king that comes into a city and he has with him all types of ministers. And the Medrash mentions 3 types of ministers: Duchsin, Isrichin, Ifrichin, Isretilutin, 3 types of ministers, high ministers. And as the king comes into the city, each one of the people that are in the city, one of them says, I want to take the Ifrichin from me. I want to take the other one, the Duchsin. The other one wants, each one wants to take for themselves to connect to a certain one of the high ministers of the king. And there was one wise man there, Pikeach, and he says, Anan Nasiv Malka, I'm going to take the king. Because all the rest of them, they're just switched. They're not everlasting. They're not things that last. Now he's a minister, tomorrow he may not be. But the king doesn't switch. And so the Rebbe asks a question. And the Rebbe says, why does it say that there was a wise person who says this? And we say this is the idea of Chelki Havaya Amra Nafshi. That what's the nimshal is that the nations of the world, each one of them takes one of the ministers, one worships the sun, the other worships the moon, etc., etc. And the Jewish people, they say, I want the king himself. The Rebbe says, but why do you need to be so smart and so wise in order to choose the king? Isn't that an obvious thing? Even a child understands that the king is so much greater than all the other ministers. Why do we need to have such a great wisdom in order to choose the king? Another question is, why does the wise person, the Medrash says, say he's choosing the king? Because all of them are not everlasting. All of them are switched. They switch. The king never changes. Is that what the greatness of the king is? We know that the king, even the midas, the emotion, attributes of the king are higher than the head of everyone else. The essence, the king is the greatest and the highest. You don't need to have a reason why you're choosing the king. It's self-understood, the greatness of the king. Why does this great wise person say, I'm choosing the king for a reason, because all the other ones are not lasting, they may change? And so the Rebbe continues in Nois Gimel, and the Rebbe explains a possible explanation. And that is the following. We know that all the nations of the world, when they worship idols, the concept of idol worship, the Rambam explains, started way back in the time of Doir Anish. They made a very logical mistake. They realized, they knew that when Hashem gives the ashpa, when Hashem gives flow and physical abundance in the world, the way Hashem created is He gives it through the kachavim mazalis, through the various stars and constellations. And we know the pasuk says, "Mimeget vois shemesh, mimeget geresh yirachim." Certain crop grows as a result of the sun. Certain things grow from the moon, etc., etc. So the nations of the world, the way they look at it is they say, number one, if I'm going to serve and worship the stars and constellations, then I'm going to get more. I'll get more through the fact that I'm worshiping them because I'm thanking them. And since it comes through them, so they're going to give me more. And that's similar to the idea that we say, when someone goes into a restaurant and the waiter brings a cup of wine, it's true that the cup of wine belongs to the owner of the restaurant, but nevertheless you give a tip to the waiter. Why do you give a tip to the waiter? Because you'll get better service. And even more than that, the owner actually wants you to thank the waiter and to tip the waiter. And the same thing here, they said, number one, if we'll give to the star and the sun and the moon, we'll serve them, they'll give us more. And also that's what Hashem wants. If Hashem gave them so much honor, that means Hashem wants us also to serve them and to thank them. Then they came from there, they reached an even bigger mistake, that they thought that Hashem left the world. Yes, Hashem created the world originally, but then He left it in the hands of the stars and all the various constellations that they can decide and give as they wish, and that's why they serve only them. And that idea is what came later. And the Rebbe says that in truth, both of these are the idea that we say that the nations of the world call Hashem Elokod Elokaya, the God of gods. Because even those who think that Hashem, God forbid, left the world, they still know that Hashem is the God, He's really the one in charge. But they say He's the one who's ultimately in charge, but right now, it's these other gods, so to speak, that have the power and that are actually controlling the world. But even the original mistake, which is that they realize that Hashem is still the one who's giving. But they think that the stars and the sun, etc., they have the power to give more or less. Even that is, in a sense, calling them gods. Because saying that they have some type of power is saying that they're also gods. True, everything is given to them by Hashem, but that's still also the idea of a God. And that's the idea of totally negating the concept of Elokim Acherim, of foreign gods, is realizing that they have nothing. They're only kigarazin biyad achaytzev. They're like the axe in the hands of the wood chopper. Hashem is the one giving. He gives through them, but it's still Hashem thanking them doesn't help you anything. It's not like a waiter in the restaurants. And that, the Rebbe says, is perhaps a way to understand the wisdom of the Jew who understands that he chooses the king. Because the wisdom is the realization that he doesn't just take things as they seem. A person who looks as things seem, even the wise person who looks and sees things as they seem, he sees that the fact is that the ashpa, that everything that I'm getting it through the kechavim mazalis, through the various stars, etc. The Jew realizes the truth that it's all coming from Hashem. And similar to the idea that sometimes when it comes to business or in other things like that, a person who looks at things and he only sees the outside, he's not a pikeach. In general, Chachamim tell us, Ezu Chacham Arei Esanayla, the wise person knows the truth. He knows what's really happening. The person who sees things only outside, he sees only the artificial, he sees only the outside aspect of things. So he thinks that my business, and when I'm going to get involved more, it's going to make me more money. I'm the one who's making myself the money. Or the person who I'm involved with in business, that's how I'm getting money. He doesn't realize the pikeach, the wise person realizes, and he's the one who totally negates the idea of foreign gods by realizing, no, it's all Hashem. That's the true realization of seeing the truth. So that aspect would mean that what's the wisdom of Jews? The pikchos chelki avai amra nafshi, that we don't look at things the way they seem superficially. We look at the truth and the reality that everything's coming from Hashem, that Hashem is the only one and that everything is Hashem. But the Rebbe continues in Ois Dalet, and the Rebbe says, however, from the Medrash it seems, by the fact that it's bringing a mashal, the analogy that we bring is duchsin and ifrechin, tilutin, the different types of ministers, which in truth, those different ministers, they do have a certain power. They do have certain power of decision, of deciding how much to give. So the idea of, in the mashal, in the analogy, when they all come to town and one guy says, I want to talk to this minister, he really could gain something by talking to the minister, which seems to imply that it's not like in the nimshal, where in the nimshal we say it's kigaras and biyad hachaytzev, it's an axe in the hand of the woodchopper. Serving the sun and the moon and the stars isn't going to give you anything, because they're not giving anything. They're only they're only an intermediate. They're only not even intermediary. They're only a funnel through which Hashem funnels the blessings into the world, but it's all coming from Hashem. But why then does the Medrash give a mashal of something where they could give? Says the Rebbe an amazing thing. True, in the reality they can't give. But the real reason why the Pikeach chooses only Hashem is not because he knows that nothing else is able to give, and he can't gain anything by serving or worshipping the sun and the moon, etc. The pikchos, the wisdom of the one who says that he wants to choose Hashem, is that he says, I don't care even about the ability to get something in a different way, because I'm not looking for myself. All I want is to serve the king. So it's the difference between the Goyim, who are worshipping the idols, and the Jews who are worshipping Hashem, is that the Goyim who are worshipping the idols, they're thinking only about themselves. The difference between the Goy and the Jew is not only that the Goy looks at the at the superficial outside and he doesn't see what it really is, and the Jew sees what it really is, that it's really coming from Hashem. Something even deeper. The Jew says, I don't care, I'm not looking for myself in order to gain, in order to get more, in order to be able to have more on my own. I rather want one thing, and all I care about is to serve the king. It's not about me and what I can get out of it. In the long run, it all comes from Hashem. But, like it says in Chassidus, that Hashem enables there to come sometimes hashpah, that it comes through the klippos, that it comes through the outer places, through the opposite side. And when it comes to the opposite side, there's two things. First of all, it's izdamin tadir, it's always there, it's constantly available, and you don't need to do anything for it. And like it says, Asher noichal b'Mitzrayim chinam, in Egypt, when you eat, it's for nothing. You don't have to do anything, you don't have to work in order to get there. And on the other hand, in the meantime, you get more. For the meantime, you get more abundant when you get it from Klippa, because it's not decided based on your actions, it's just getting. So the Goyim, when they want to receive it, not just because they don't recognize the truth, it's also because all they care about is getting. So they say, I don't want to have to work. I don't want to have to do something in order to receive my hashpah. I want to just get whatever I can, and I want to get it in abundance. And the Jew says, I don't care if in the meantime will be less, because later on the Jew gets also more. And I don't care if I have to work for it, that's fine, because all I care about is not myself, what I'm going to get. I care about my service, my serving the king, which that's why he's called a Pikeach.